Live. All right, that's all we do.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Wednesday, February 4th, 2026 Student Services Committee meeting. We are the School District of Menominee Falls Board of Education Student Services Committee meeting. There is a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance at board committee meetings. There will be no full board action taken in any board committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district's YouTube page. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit our SDMF YouTube site. It is 5:30 p.m. Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, Village Hall, upper level conference room 3344/45. We are at West 156 North 8480 Pilgrim Road. Mr. Halverson, was the meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
All right, I need a approval of the minutes from January 14th, 2026. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. All right, tonight, we only have one discussion item, and we have all of the associate principals from all of our schools here tonight. So, Mr. Halverson, please take it.
All right, so aside from one, we're missing one. Tanya Brenner had another appointment tonight, so I'll be doing her presentation. But this is a process we began last year with the associate principals doing a presentation on our behavioral summaries so far to this point, as well as just kind of comparison between last year and this year's numbers, as well as previous years too. So we will be talking about behavior, we'll be talking about attendance, but also as a systematic approach to our interventions overall, what we're doing with our students. One, to increase attendance, but also to reduce behavioral incidents. And that comes from the approach that all the people here, along with the rest of the building, staff, and administration do to make our schools a better place. What we're going to be doing tonight as far as presentation format's concerned, we'll be taking a look at attendance rate at all the buildings. And that'll be a comparison between the 24-25 school year with our, so far to this point, first semester data from the 25-26 school year. We'll also be taking a look at the behavioral breakdown for in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions for the 24-25 versus 25-26 school year. And then we'll also be talking about the behavioral breakdown by subtitles compared to 25-26 with last year. What are we looking at with the data? They're going to be doing presentations on what the data shows and what their breakdown of that is, but also what are the key steps for both attendance and behavior in each building. From a district standpoint, we're going to start off with a behavioral, kind of a summary of where we're at, and this is the same format that we utilized last year. We start talking about suspensions in school and out of school. This is obviously the final opportunity for, it's not really an intervention as much as it's an opportunity for us to communicate with students. So this is a bad consequence for what you're doing from a behavior standpoint. So we have put some pretty significant changes in place over the last 2 years. Individual buildings and aspects of all of these connected things are constantly evaluated, they're constantly gone through, but we're also constantly modifying what we're doing throughout the process to improve upon our experience for our students. So when we look at the example of a system that you're going to see tonight, it's going to be the behavioral subtypes. This summer we looked at our behavioral subtypes, and you may recall last year, this was one of the focal areas that when we first started looking at this one, and I'm sure you remember this one especially, there were a lot of different classifications for a lot of different behaviors, and it made it very difficult to figure out how to intervene because it was just too many finite things to have an intervention put in place for. Having said that, right now we've narrowed our scope substantially, but we're also going to be looking at, we might have narrowed it a little bit too substantially for one area, and you're going to see that when we start looking at the buildings and the subtypes that we got. Because there are going to be some, one in particular that we're probably going to be bringing back next year, just because it makes sense and it's logical. And I can talk more about that too, but I think you're going to see it pretty quick. From a suspension standpoint, it's pretty comparable actually, but there is one thing that you want to keep in mind. Last year's data was a substantial decrease from the year before. So when you look at this for the whole year for in-school suspensions, we had 139. With that 139, if you look at where we're at semester one, about halfway through, we're at about 130. When you look at the total number of days last year, it was about 105 3/4, 106 days, versus this year our in-school suspension was about 94. So we're kind of in that same area, but we are still seeing a little bit of a decrease overall with the amount of days of in-school suspension. Again, Our goal isn't to just suspend students whenever something goes wrong. Our goal is to get students to understand that this behavior is not appropriate for school, but we need you to be in class and we need you to be in school. We can't teach an empty desk. And when you look at the out-of-school suspension rate, we're looking at 161 for last year for the whole year. The days for 310. This year, again, we have 86, so if you were to double it, you're looking at about 172. But again, when you look at the number of days, we've substantially reduced the number of days that the students are out of school, because again, we're applying a consequence, but the number of days is we want the students back in school so we can educate them. So when you look at this balance, and you're gonna see as they start going through the building breakdown, individual buildings are gonna vary up and down depending on how it went last year, depending on what the year before. But all of these things, and we're gonna talk about that with the attendance too, all of these things are so independent by cohorts, by a class. And having done this for as many years as I have, I can tell you, every individual class that goes through a school or a district even has its own personality. It's got its own thing. Some students are very athletically gifted. Some students are very academically gifted. Some students will have more issues that you want to help intervene with. So every class is going to have certain things that you're going to notice about it. And as you start looking at what they're going to be presenting, you're going to see that some of this is pertaining to very few amount of students. You're going to have a certain student that might be absent for a lot of times. You're going to have a certain student that needs more behavioral interventions at a certain amount of time. And that's completely and totally normal. What we do is we try to find these issues, and by looking at this data, it gives us cause for what can we do differently to help this student out or this family out. One of the things that we look at from a district standpoint is our average daily attendance rate. And I do have to point out, this is different than what you see in the school report card. Our average daily attendance rate throughout this school year has been pretty significantly improved. Our goal is really to be around 90%. We set our goal as a group this summer at 92%. Throughout this entire school year, we've averaged anywhere between 93 and 97%. So we're within that window where we want to be. The school report card is a little bit different. When you see those reports, the school report card bases off what the state gathers the year prior to when it's reported. So for example, our 24-25 report card that we got this year is actually based on the attendance rate for the 23-24 school year. It's kind of odd, and I liken it more to what we do as physical therapy than what that is more than a test report. This is what we had in place. Can't really do much about it 2 years ago, but here's what we're looking at now and what we do from a physical therapy standpoint to prevent those issues moving forward. So when you look at the comparisons that we have, this is a combination of all absences. It's excused and unexcused, but it also takes into account absences that are medically excused. The state's report doesn't look at any of that. They just look at if you're absent, period. When we have an excused, medically excused student, that's not going to impact our average daily attendance rate. The state, it does impact it because you're not at school. Overall, it's the same goal. They want the students in class so we can educate them. We want the students in class so we can educate them. But it is different on how they report it versus what we do with what we're looking at every time. And I'm gonna go back one more. As we look at this average daily attendance rate, and you're gonna see a great example when I'm doing a presentation for, I believe it's Valley View, is when you have a substantial sickness go through a school, and I can just speak for Riverside, Dave, you'll know this too. Riverside, right before Christmas break, had a 100 student day that they were absent.
The last day was nasty.
So it, you get a stomach bug go through with little guy, and it don't really take them out. So that has a very significant impact on an average daily attendance rate for a month. We talked about it with deer hunting season. That Friday right before Thanksgiving is substantially noticeable difference, especially at the middle school and high school, but at the elementary you see it too, where people are excusing their children out. So those are the things we look at because they're patterns that we want to identify. If something looks unusual, we try to figure out why, and is there something we need to do differently to help out so that, again, the students are in school. And this is an example of something we're doing differently this year. Attendance and tardies overall for the district went down. Last year from 24-25, it was about 9.4 thousand tardies. So obviously, that's a lot, but you also have to consider we're talking about 4,600, when we're looking at how many students we got. So as you look at what we've got so far this year, we're at 9,200, but the difference is we're starting to monitor what we've got for excused and unexcused tardies. High school's done this for pretty much ever. The middle school started to do it a little bit differently last year, I believe. But as we start looking at it district-wide, these are things that we want to manage because, especially at the elementary school, if you're tardy for 30 minutes, that's not just a tardy, that becomes a half-day absence. And that's based upon the state standard that they do at elementary schools for what considers a day absence.
Can
We looked
you,
at that last year as well,
can you say what that is again?
the 30 minutes.
So, yeah,
Yep,
so
so
even
in
this,
elementary school, if you're tardy for more than 30 minutes, it actually counts as a half a day absence. And that's because it takes out such a substantial amount of the learning part of the day. Elementary school is different than at the middle school and high school, they're separate from periods. So when you look at a period absence or a period tardy, it could be something, I think you get a 10-minute rule, John, is that right? 10-minute rule where you're talking about a ninth of a class period, where that 30-minute rule could be substantially larger for elementary school too. So that is a big difference between primary and secondary levels. But again, we still wanna look at it, right? Because we wanna see, is there something we can do differently? Is there something we need to look at to modify? So that's something you're gonna see on the reports as well. You'll see the blue and then you'll also see the gold part, and the gold part is the unexcused time.
So last year we didn't count, we didn't separate the excused and unexcused,
We did at the high school, I don't know if you.
only the high, only the high.
Just the high school. And that was also because it was part of their behavioral goals in the high school.
So the bottom number is only the high school?
The bottom number is a full district, because we started doing it this year district-wide.
The number on top then is from only the high school from last year?
No, that's everybody, so those are.
I'm confused on why,
Sure.
we only took data from the high school, which of those numbers is the high school?
They're built into it. So in that 9.4 thousand, that includes the high school. That was all of our tardies combined, excused and unexcused, so that's the high school, elementary and middle school.
Okay.
And then the bottom is still them combined, but we have them actually monitoring the unexcused tardies at the elementary and middle school. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we really, if you look at the overall total, we went from 9.4 to 9.2 thousand. So we're still going down, which is
Going
good,
down.
we're trending in a good direction. All right, so let's take a look, and like I said, I'm gonna be doing this for Tanya. And she's associate principal at Shady Lane and Valley View Elementary Schools. And you're gonna, we'll start off with the same thing, you're gonna see systematically, this is the slide, kind of the process we went with. The VAPs are gonna be adding some of their own information, some of their own data points as well, because it's gonna be critical to see what are some of the things that they're changing, what's happening there too. So as you look at the visions, be safe, be kind, do your job, be responsible, respectful, and safe. And I'm not gonna read through all these, but these are different opportunities for climate and culture that are created at Shady Lane and Valley View, and you're gonna see at the other schools as well. They have processes they put in place really for building that relationship, not just with students, but also with families too. So you're gonna see that across the board when everybody does their presentation. The visions, when you look at what it is we're doing, there's been a lot more collaboration, and I think you guys will confirm that as well. There's been a lot more collaboration between the middle school, the high school, and the elementary school. And not just with, academics, but that's been a key component as well. But also for things like our AODA committee that Mr. Tillman works with, and like the STAR program at the middle school that Tony works with, and the high school program with some of the different things that they do mentorship. There's been a lot more collaboration, students in together high school and elementary school, but also from across the board, secondary and primary too. So you're gonna see a lot of that come up. And here's some pictures of our Shady Laners. And there's an example of a couple of middle school kids there doing some reading with the Shady Lane students. Literacy inside and outside the classroom at recess. Both schools also have a therapy dog, which helps not only teach responsibility, but they actually read with the dog, which is kind of nice. It makes them feel like they're helping teach the dog how to read. And then there's some math games, and then there's also a community connection part too, because fire department and our emergency management systems in Menominee Falls are very, very involved with what we do at the schools.
Especially with the kid with the broken wrist,
Yeah.
football player.
He didn't do it. As you look at the other side, so we look at Valley View, and they too have a lot going on for building relationships with the students. And I'm trying to remember which one we got, actually this one, there's a combination in this one too. She actually had some pictures of Shady Lane in here too. There's check-in, check-outs, there's teaching, social stories with students being leaders, ambassadors with posters, announcements, videos, leadership, by example. There's all sorts of different things that they get involved with. Office referrals when you get an award and you get a letter sent home. You get your picture on the shield, and I know the middle school's gonna be talking about some of that stuff for the recognition from the positive reinforcement aspect. But there is a lot going on in both of those schools. This is going to be a uniform approach that you're gonna see pretty much, I think, on everybody's slides. This is our systems approach that we took for attendance overall that we started last year, where we started working at the secondary level and putting different things, including the parent portal through PowerSchool for attendance. Joke there, but also for recognitions and celebrations as well. We really wanted to increase the amount of conversations and communication with homes and with families. And a lot of what we are still working on is trying to improve on those systems. And what can we do differently to make it easier for parents and easier for families that need to get communicated, hey, my student's gonna be late, my student's gonna be out. But really, what do we do when we have good things going on? We need to celebrate those things. If kids are doing good, they're showing up at school, they're on time, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, let's celebrate that and let's recognize what they're doing as well. So those are things that we do, not just at Shady Lane, but also at Valley View. And you're gonna see a very similar attendance rate for both schools here. This 24 and 25 and 25-26 comparison is right from the beginning of the year through January 25th. Their targeted attendance rate again was 90% with a goal tied into everyone in the districts of 92. They're running at 95 for the first trimester, but I will also tell you in January, they're also starting to see that it's 93% drop because we also had a bug go through, so we're gonna start seeing those drops go through too. February, we're probably gonna see that also happen. As we look at it throughout the average daily attendance for the year though, you're gonna see it's probably around about 94-95% of all buildings. So just keep in mind, those things do fluctuate, but for the most part, we're looking at this for the average daily attendance rate. And there's the tardies, and this one's gonna look a little odd. So as you look at Shady Lane, when you look at the number of tardies, and this goes back to when you're more than 30 minutes tardy, overall, the amount was a drop, and there are some important points here to point out. As you look at this, the tardy AMs are our focus area that they're continuing to work on. So again, it's students having a hard time getting up in the morning, younger kids, getting ready, getting everything going. Sometimes that's a reason why they're late. When you look at the total right here, again, we started managing and started monitoring, not managing as much yet. We started monitoring what those excused and unexcused tardies are. So when you look at this, this is going to be something as a district and as a systems approach we're going to be addressing because we have 68 of those are excused, but 192 of those would be considered unexcused.
So can you give an example of an unexcused tardy by a kindergartner, first grader, second grader?
Most of the time, and I'm going to just tell you it's not most of the time, all the time, parents forget to call it in.
Oh,
So it's not as nefarious as it sounds. I mean,
okay.
they just didn't call in. So again, why? That's part of the communication and the follow-up after.
Okay.
Like, okay, you hit this number. And that's again, part of the systems approach is sending the letters out. You have this many tardies, hey, just want to give you a heads up. Oh, well, I was reasonably late that day. Oh, they didn't get dressed that day. So they can excuse up to 10 days, just like absences. So it's that all or part of one day. But for the most part, it boils down to, well, you forgot to call them in.
Is there a requirement that it needs to be a written excuse?
No.
Okay,
So-
because like if it's a kindergartner, are they walking their kindergartner into the office? Can they
Sometimes.
verbally say it?
They can.
Okay.
A lot of times they'll just walk them to the front door outside. I'm just picturing Shady. They'll walk them to the front door
Okay.
outside and see you later. Give them a kiss and a
Okay.
hug. And then, again, we're tracking it because
Right.
what can we do differently to make this
Got it.
a better thing? So the good news in all of this is that when you look at the total, overall, this is one of the impressive parts here. So if you look at the total from last year, we were at 269, I believe. No, that's not one. For these, this year we were at 260. Yes, you had this number on there. And for last year, we had 462, 63, 64, 464. So when you look at what we had for 23-24, we actually had 467 and 234. So when you look at the total from 2 years ago, we were actually 700 tardies at this point. So again, that conversation, the communication, just saying, hey, we really need you here. And I know, Dave, we were talking about this last year. There's a lot of those things that are put in place. It's like, okay, as you're coming in the door 5 minutes after the start of school, we need to do things differently. And I know and specifically I've been at Franklin, they did a lot of different things to modify what that would look like when they're coming in the morning, just so the kids were starting school on time in the classroom. So it's just a matter of what are we looking at? Okay, we've got an issue here, let's address it, let's figure out what we can do better for the kids. And similar for what we've got at Valley View, we had 95% for last year, at this time 94%. We're still within where we want to be for our range, but again, it's just things we want to keep an eye on because that is going to fluctuate depending on what's going on in the building for illness, what's going on in the building with certain families. Specifically with this one, you're gonna see that, there are certain ones, especially when it comes to this, there's gonna be certain students in particular that are carrying a lot of the burden of these numbers. And you're gonna see that across the board at all the schools. So rather than say, oh, wow, we've got a tardy problem at Valley View, this gives us cause to say, where is our issue here? And we might be able to narrow it down to maybe it's like 3 or 4 families that we need to work with and figure out how can we get help to get them, to get the kids out of school at that. So again, when you're looking at this total here, we got 230, I'm gonna make sure our numbers are right here. And she had down 267 for this year, and last year we had 137.88, so we're pretty much right around the same area, a little bit higher. I think that's, again, we're looking at AM, we're not necessarily looking at PM tardies for Valley View. So I think we're gonna be pretty consistent right now from where we were, as opposed to 600 or 500 the year before in 23-24. So again, we're trending in the right direction based upon what we're doing. So attendance next steps, we're gonna continue to check on those selected students. We're individualizing what it is we're locating as far as an issue from the data that we're breaking down. Increasing the communication home, that was something we started at the elementary school level this year. And then we're doing a bit more of those attendance check-ins with the families that need extra help too. And then on the positive side, students with good attendance we're recognizing and we're providing incentives through Hawk bills and night cash. Behavior systems, we're looking at some different things that we put in place from there, de-escalation training. We also got the elementary school this year moving forward with the teachers actually doing the log entries, which is a process that we started at the high school. Last year, you guys started doing it more at your school. So again, it's about the teachers being able to log something that happens right away, or at least as soon as they possibly can, to get them in the system for Power School for our associate principals and principals to deal with. Communication's been increased consistently across the board, and then also having celebrations for the positive behaviors and recognizing students are doing the good stuff. I'm gonna let that one just kind of sit for a little bit. And there's gonna be one thing that jumps out at you right off the bat, I would think. 2 things, really. As you look at 24-25, this goes back to what I was saying about that huge number of different things that could happen where it becomes almost impossible for us to isolate. Okay, what can we do to intervene differently? I think in this case here, you can kind of see, hey, guess what? We need to intervene and we need to do some things differently as far as talking to students about inappropriate physical contact. So as you start looking at it, and they're definitely working on it and addressing it. But one of the things we are gonna be adding to these subtypes, and I'm gonna spoil some of this parade here, but that inappropriate physical contact is also a combination of fighting, play fighting or real fighting. Majority of these are play fighting. So when we do our log entries, we can individually break down in the description process and have notes for whoever's writing it up, whoever's addressing it as an administrator, and almost all of these are play fighting. And the reason why we don't allow play fighting is play fighting almost all the time at some point will lead to real fighting, so we need to intervene faster in the process. We identify this as play fighting so that we can communicate to students, you need to stop doing this. This isn't something we do at school. When you look at the rest of them, they're pretty much in line with a lot of the things we expect. Inappropriate location, students not in the right part of the building where they're supposed to. Inappropriate language, we're looking at 2 students there. We're gonna be looking at those things differently, but there is one thing. Really, it was strategies for different ways to solve conflict, and they call it handle big emotions that don't include using hands or feet to address the issue with other students. And again, it's that play fighting. That in and of itself was the majority of those things too. As we look at Valley View, you're gonna see some similar things. The difference here is really that inappropriate behavior. We start seeing students are acting out, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's at recess. They're doing things that you cannot do in a school and not have consequences. So when you start looking at what they're doing, and some of those are gonna be addressed with the progressive discipline model we talked about last year too. But when you look at this, there's also a lot of this is on bus behavior. So when you have inappropriate bus behavior, we log it as a school because we're the ones that help address that with the bus company. When you look at the locations, and this is something that we don't have here, and we don't talk about during this meeting, but one of the other things we break down is in the time of day that these things occur, as well as the locations at where these things occur. So if we start seeing a lot of different incidents in the lunchroom, we start seeing it at a certain time of day, we start seeing that it's happening on the playground, we know that's something we want to address and intervene quickly. So in the case of this one here, out of those 72 behaviors, out of those inappropriate behaviors, the majority of them were at 11 a.m. and the majority of them were on the playground. And a lot of that's just, again, we're teaching strategies on how do we address conflict and how do we deal with each other when we have an issue. Insubordination, that one is 3 different students in particular that had the majority of those log entries. And that's, what do we do when we address it? How do we get students to understand what insubordination is? How do we get them to say, no, you don't treat adults that way in a classroom. So just know that those are the areas, but you can see the difference of how easy it is now for us to isolate where's an issue we want to address. And it's because of those number of log entries. You're also gonna see the overall number, when you look at the totals of these things, they do go down overall. But if you were to look at this and see as you look at that graph, you can tell right away, what is something we need to address? Inappropriate behavior. What does that look like? Then we start breaking down the descriptions from the log entries and see if there's a pattern that we can look at. That we can address large scale or as individualized students.
I'm still on the 165 instances of inappropriate physical contact. But last year, we talked about throwing a dodgeball in a kid's face was inappropriate physical contact, so.
You got it. But the thing that we really, again, in elementary, yeah, I mean, when you're talking grades K2, the fighting issue isn't as substantial of an issue that you have to address where you want to identify, this is an issue we gotta fix. Whereas if you start getting into the other schools, start getting grade 3, 4, 5, you're gonna fight fights. Where students can get substantially injured. When you're dealing with a kindergartner that's poking and punching somebody like this and the other one starts punching back, yeah, it's fighting, but you would hope that that's not gonna result in some sort of physical damage to the other student. That's gonna have to be addressed with something like an assault charge or something like that. But again, these are the ages we start shaping those behaviors and understandings that this is not okay to do at school, it's not okay to deal with things like that. When you get to the middle school, we wanna have these addressed before they get there, because now we're talking about kids that have a little bit more chances of hurting somebody else. High school, especially when you start talking about high school students. So again, we're working on shaping the behavior at this age. We're identifying it, we're recognizing it, we intervene with it, we're educating them so that by the time they get older, this isn't gonna be a problem. So again, when we look at a number like 165, again, my first thought was, ooh, that's a lot. But then you're like, yeah, we're identifying it though. We're not having substantial injuries and substantial damage. We're identifying it because it's something we wanna fix. But I wanna separate that out from what is a fight.
Are those numbers, I know we're gonna see them later, but are those numbers similar to Ben Franklin and Riverside? Or
You'll see quickly,
or is it just a Valley View and
no, I
Sugar
mean,
Lane issue?
you'll notice that they're similar, and like the inappropriate physical piece is our highest one as well, especially at both the buildings really, and as Dan said, at the Ben Franklin. And I had one just today where I was looking at the video, and it was literally 2 kids doing this kind of stuff to each other. It's physical contact, you can't be doing that because, as Dan said, the play stuff turns to real stuff, and that's the conversation of it with the students. And so it is a trend that we have where the physical piece is typically the largest one. It's the one that also people notice right away, and kids are more likely to tell too. Like if somebody is just, if they look at them funny, they don't necessarily tell us or whatnot. But when somebody comes up and pushes you, whether it's on purpose or not, and that's the other question we have with kids frequently is accident or on purpose. And even when sometimes when it is accidental, it might still get written up, and it's the lesson of, well, this is why we don't run down the hall, because you didn't mean to knock somebody completely over, but you did, kind of thing. And so there's that kind of piece too as well.
I think about too, like with Shady Lane, and then we'll see with Ben Franklin, is remembering like kindergarten, first grader, and second graders, especially the littles, 4K even kindergarten, they don't have the words. If they're frustrated, angry, mad, it often comes out, right,
Yes,
physically.
yep. I mean, speaking to Ben Franklin's, one of the students that he's on the top like 5 to 6 of ours. He's a 4K student, and it truly is that he hasn't figured that piece out yet, how to communicate, and he speaks through actions, whether it's taking shoes off and getting like mad in that regard kind of thing. It is a lot of that kind of stuff.
Or it also comes out on the playground too. You said at 11 a.m. they're cooped up for 4 hours, and then all of a sudden they hit you on the playground, and they're boys
Yeah, they're sitting
kind
for a
of a thing.
And you can do it well done.
Okay,
Right,
alright.
get them up, move them.
So as you're looking at this, this is the summary of suspensions. And when you look at it, again, you're gonna see some differences, but these are a decrease from the prior year. But when you look at the out-of-school suspension for Shady Lane in particular, That all belongs to 3 students, 2 of which have been offered additional intervention, behavioral intervention help, and both times the families have denied. They said, we don't wanna do it. Which again is a prerogative, but we just have to find alternative means we can help the kids understand, we need you to do this for behavior standpoint. When they start impacting the educational process of others, you have no alternative, but we have to remove you from this environment right now. So when we look at how can we intervene differently and offer this as an opportunity for families to take it, we ideally would like them to take the intervention opportunity so that we can get the students to behave differently, but when they don't, we don't have a lot of options, alternatives to it. And when it comes to in-school suspensions, it's the same students as well. So we deal with what we can deal with, so in our environments we have. Last steps for us for behavior for Shady Lane and Valley View. Really, again, targeting the work around the behaviors. How can we work with families so that it's that three-legged stool? You know, we're working with the student, we're working with families, we're working with school, trying to intervene and make sure that the behaviors are appropriate for school. Students behave well. We have a daily announcement focus where they get to do things and participate with some positive interventions. But really, it's like, hey, your student's doing good. One of the things as a parent, I remember when I was teaching 1 or 2 years ago, when I was a teacher, I remember it was always nice when you call families, and I had a process for notifying parents when the students were struggling in my class, but I also had a process for notifying parents when the kids were doing really good. And it was always more fun for me and the families when I call them up and say, hey, just wanna let you know, Abraham or Johnny were doing really good in class. I'm not doing Abraham because I'm friends with Abraham.
There's definitely one of those in your
Yeah, Abraham, I bet you he's watching, he's like, I don't know what he's talking about. But it was like, those are always the fun phone calls, you know, those are the ones that are more appreciated. So those positives go a long way too. All right, and at this time, here, Tony's watching my clock,
19 minutes.
On your window, Dave?
We expected that.
I'm taking it.
That means you can cut off time.
All right, Dave, so it's up to you.
So, Ben Franklin and Riverside obviously are the same as, Shady and Valley, so Ben Franklin's 4th grade through 2nd, Riverside's 3rd through 5th grade, and you'll notice similar trends, with the students, across the building. So once again, when we have our youngest learners, there's some patterns and trends that we see, as well as as they're starting to get older into adolescence, with 3rd through 5th grade as well. Once again, for both buildings, our focus is on that being safe and kind. So for Ben Franklin, we will be safe, we'll be kind, and we will be a learner. It's part of our Ben Franklin pledge that students say each Wednesday, as well as our Riverside Rockets. They are respectful, safe, and rocket ready, which once again means that they are ready to go each day, each period. So having their materials ready, positive attitude, those kind of forward-focused things. And that's just some of the different work that we do with students in the classrooms, as well as like through guidance classes and things like that. Other activities that we have to build the connections with the students and the families. Pen pals with our community members is always a favorite one with 5th graders, writing letters to different community members, and it's a great way for our connection with the community ed and rec to build that piece as well. So some of our senior community members having that connection with us as well, and they get an opportunity to meet their pen pals at the end of the year, which is always fun for both groups involved. Partnering with the high school as well, bringing in high school students coming in to help tutor. We actually have a new batch of students, high school students that have just recently come into the buildings. So a great opportunity. A lot of them are with the Education Academy, so getting some of that early experience when it comes to actually working with kids. They might think, oh yeah, elementary school is fun, I want to be a teacher, and then you come back and maybe not. And so it's great for them to get that experience. It's great for our kids, but also great before they
Or
spend
maybe they
thousands of
really
dollars.
like it.
In particular, one of the ones that we've started to do at Riverside is we've had our student of the months, but we're doing assemblies to go along with that. And that was one of the pieces that our culture team as well as our PBIS team started just in January actually when we came back from winter break. And the thought process behind it was that the kids hear their names on announcements, but they don't get a chance to see each other. We don't get a chance to celebrate. Once again, we've got kids doing and staff and everybody doing really great work that we want to try to find more opportunities to celebrate. And so we actually just had one of those yesterday, and so that one involved students getting a chance to participate and get celebrated with the whole school there. So it's a great opportunity for us to kind of do that. Here's just a few of the examples, once again, of just that community and climate and culture that we have. So our pen pals, as I referenced, an example of our Being Rocket Ready poster there for students as they go along the way. At Ben Franklin, we have a job wall, which is where family members get a chance to share kind of the experiences that they have or the different careers that they have. It's always great walking past with a kid and they go, "There's my mom, there's my aunt," kind of thing along the way. And it's just also neat for them to really see, and they ask sometimes like, "What is that?" Like the different jobs and whatnot, and then taking time to talk through it with them as well. And then our hearts, those are actually the ones from last year, but the students just recently got their hearts and are repeating them this week to decorate as well. And so just that be kind focus that we have with students along the way as well. Similar practice, which you'd expect across the district for our attendance pieces, fostering those connections with families along the way, trying to get that early intervention piece as well. One of the things that I'll share right now actually, and you'll see in the numbers later, but like as we get into this, you'll see the numbers, but there's the numbers represent somebody, they represent these kids. And especially for the elementary level, when it comes to like our attendance pieces, rarely is it a kid that's late or tardy or absent. Sometimes they're sick and things like that, but it's not the 5-year-old all the time that's they're not driving the car kind of thing. So working with the families is really important for us. And just also clarifying and supporting families along the way. Like I said, I have specific kids I think about when I'm thinking about attendance pieces. And for example, like one of the students, we met in December about attendance for them, and the students' attendance, they were one of our high flyers, and so gone a number of days. And since they came back, the student has only been gone 3 days. But they're only marked, and I was actually looking at today, and they're marked as being gone because they were a little bit more than tardy, so they got marked as half day. But the student has literally been here every day, and so that's something that the kid wasn't getting here. And working with the family of trying to come up to solutions of how do we get them here? Like, okay, every family has a unique situation. Somebody's working third shift, somebody's that. And so being creative with how can we do it? Who should we communicate with? Like if they aren't here, who are the people? And so those are really the conversations that we try to have when we're having the attendance meetings to get those students here. Obviously, it's an ongoing practice and battle that we have to keep going for these students because once again, at our level, it truly is trying to provide that access for the kiddo along the way. So yes, clear messaging is one of the biggest things, and that early intervention is our goal with it. Attendance at Ben Franklin, overall, we're above our targeted goal there. A big part for Ben Franklin, one, we had a little bout of sickness come through, but we've also had a number of families that have either chosen to take trips along the way, and some of those trips are quite long. We actually typically, if a student is longer than 20 days and we know what they're going to be, they actually get unenrolled for that period so that they're not absent for 20 days. Sometimes we don't know that that's going to be the case, and then we get hit with that. Also, unfortunately, for a handful of our families, they've been dealing with some different visa and citizenship kind of things that they're working on, and so they've had to frequently leave the country for those pieces, and it's not a quick, easy process for them. So there's actually a handful of our families that have had 10 to 20 to 30 days where they've been absent throughout the year. And so that's one of the pieces that definitely dipped us further on that piece. And those ones, once again, the families don't know that they're going to be gone or how long they're going to be gone, so we can't quite do that. And we don't want to make a different hardship for them when they come back.
So what Dave's talking about is when you look at, what's considered to be a full academic year, FAY, for a student, is 20 school days or 30 calendar days. We wrote 20 school days just because it's easier to manage. So I'm not gonna pinpoint a specific student or country, but we do have some students that left for like 15 days when their family had to go get their visas renewed. They came back to the country and we can't unenroll them because we haven't reached that full academic year, like that level. But we also have families that have been out of the country for more than that 20 days, and I'm just thinking they had left the country for visiting family in Europe, and then they still returned, but because they were over that full academic year qualifier of 20 days, we had enrolled them on the first day. They knew they were gonna be gone that long, whether it's for a family member's funeral, whether it was some other thing that they were doing for, just something that took them out of the country for that time frame. In the past, what had happened is they unenroll them and we make them go through an entire enrollment process. We don't need to do that. when we do an enrollment, really all we gotta do is turn the switch back on to Power School and they're back enrolled. If they're at the same address, they're still a resident of Menominee Falls, we don't need to make this big hoop jump out of it. We know that if you're gone more than 20 days, you're not a full academic year student, we're enrolling you. You come back, we'll re-enroll you. If you don't come back, well, you're enrolled, we don't really worry about it because you're out of the country, which is qualified from the state of Wisconsin as a move out of the state. So again, those are the things those are the detail work that, when you look at a slide like that these guys are great at and these guys are doing in the background. But it really is about getting knowledge of that law and the state law when it comes to attendance, and when it comes to truancy, and when it comes to those different pieces and those aspects. These guys are really good at it. And really it's about working with the family, what can we do, where you need help. We're not gonna change whether you gotta get a visa, you gotta get it renewed, okay, well, we'll work with you when you come back. Yeah, it stinks for the kid, cause the kid might be gone for 20, 30 days, but when I get back, we'll figure out where you're at, we're gonna get you where you need to go. We're gonna do whatever we can do to help them. Doesn't matter to us, we're just gonna take care of the kid.
One of the other things that's really amazing with Ben Franklin this year is that we had some of the highest math test scores that we've ever had across the board. Don't know if you guys got that one or not recently, but yes, so our scores, even with the attendance piece, like our teachers have been doing some amazing work with the students, and our students are doing amazing work as well. So it's good, even though we dipped that little bit there, that we're still able to get that academic piece and support them.
Give them a clap back up.
With this part, once again, the tardies, for our students, it's pretty similar trend to what we had from the previous year. One of the biggest things I wanna highlight is the fact that, so our clock starts our day starts at 8:47, so they have until 9:17 to get in, and that's when they'd be marked absent. Also, Riverside does start at the exact same time too. So you have a lot of families where you have kids at both buildings. Yes, GPS says it's 5 minutes, but waiting through the line and those kind of things, it can be tricky, but work with families of, hey, Ben Franklin, we actually have the kids come in right away. They don't go out for a recess kind of thing, so come to our building first, then they can come right inside, we're good to go. 8:30, doors open, we don't start doing attendance until 8:47, so some of them are like, oh, I didn't realize that kind of piece, and so working with the families is important on that part. The other piece is that majority of these kids are in the building before 9 o'clock. Quite a few actually are before 8:55, so they're right after it, and we want them here and as early as possible, but yes, they're getting there pretty shortly after the bell rings. It's not that they're going to the 9:15 every day kind of thing. One of the other parts that Dan had mentioned too is just some of these are families, like clumps of families or groups of families. 3 of the families actually represent 48 of the tardies there, so a handful in that part. Whereas there's 55 that have 2 or less. So we have a larger portion, so working with some of those, and out of the families that have the higher number, about half of those have siblings that are in multiple schools, so there is a little bit of a reason for it from time to time with it, but even working with them on that piece as well.
So that makes me just think about, is there ever discussions about staggering the starts between?
That's a good question. I was actually just talking about that this other week when we were looking at this of, is there a why, is there a different reason that we could do it? In the very beginning stages of it.
Okay.
But no, we were talking about that same piece, and even just for the busing sake, that's,
Right.
I think that it might be a good way to go about doing that as well, so.
And we had that conversation last year when we started talking about start time at the middle school. And whether that was gonna be an impact or is transportation gonna get in the way, and there's been a lot of conversation.
Yeah, one of the hard parts is that, like, obviously it's a chain reaction from, I think middle school, you guys are first, then high school, then us, and so just the busing piece, the large population of our students still take the bus, so ensuring that the bus can wrap up with one of the other routes before they come to the next route.
Right.
Yeah, so that's one of the trickier parts with it.
But I even know transportation is tricky even from like Riverside to Ben Franklin, for example, like, for like wraparound or whatever.
Yeah, so for wraparound care, yes, at Riverside, the kids from Riverside get bused over to Ben Franklin for wraparound, and then Valley, I think, goes to Shady for that as well.
But even that you would think it would take this amount of time,
Correct.
it takes this amount of time.
Yes, the one we do have, and that's worked with the bus company too, on like the routes and things like that. And I've had that conversation too with them of sometimes actually having a stop or 2 along the way, where it naturally makes sense as families on the way, but then it does elongate the time between Riverside and Ben Franklin or vice versa.
Well, we also had the construction at
Oh,
Riverside.
Correct, that was tricky as well.
I'm just glad it's done.
Yes, and construction in between. with some of the roads that were closed to start this school year.
I think
That's
with the
fine.
4 elementaries, I take the attendance stuff with a grain of salt, just because there's so many variables, and like you said, the kid ain't driving the car.
Correct.
And really, the big thing is you're looking at, again, all this stuff fits together. The whole thing- Never know. Some of those things.
You don't know what you see through the picture.
No,
It is crazy though at drop off, like you see all the parents who drop off at one and they're all going to the same
flying over
route.
the valley, usually.
It's kinda crazy.
When you look at, and when Dave was talking about the map squares, all this stuff fits together. You know, if the kid's not behaving in class or is taken away from the education, it's gonna be disruption, it's gonna affect their academics. Kids not at school, obviously you can't teach an empty desk. There was a study done, and this goes back to what Dave was talking about, start times in the buses. And there was a large metropolitan Las Vegas school, in the Las Vegas school district, where there's an issue that's counseled by the time you can come. So
You've taken half of his time.
He took some money. So the study looked at the academics for one, it was an elementary school compared to the rest of the elementary schools. And they started seeing that this elementary school in particular had an issue, and their academics suffered because of it. They went through the whole process, they started doing what we do with the evaluation of attendance, trying to look at details. And what they found out was, there was, in particular, this had a transportation issue. And the transportation was constantly getting these kids at this elementary school late by at least 45 minutes. Well, that 45 minutes was a pretty critical amount of time for the kids because, lo and behold, they had their reading classes in the morning. So all these kids were doing really, really bad compared to their elementary schools because of the transportation company. And when they fixed the transportation issue and they started having, basically they paid more money to get more buses, they ended up by seeing that, oh, look at there, the reading scores and the rest of the academics improved because they looked at an issue like attendance as a problem and said, let's figure out what we're gonna do to fix it. So that's, you know, Brandon, what Dave's saying, there's gonna be issues that we're gonna have to fix them. Take it what it is, but let's keep looking at it, right? It's not gonna be something we can always fix, but at the same time, if there's something we can do differently to make it easier for families, let's figure out how to do it, so they give them their time, and if start time is one of the things we do, we talked about that. The start time is one of the things we do, what do we need to do to get it done?
So jumping in again for Riverside, obviously we moved up a little bit on our attendance this year, and that's actually one of the pieces that I had celebrated with the students at our January welcome back assembly with them. And once again, we go over the piece, as Dan said, sickness and things like that. We let them know, like when you're sick, you can't be here kind of thing. We don't want to get everybody sick, but when you are healthy enough to be at school, we want you here because there's no learning like what you have when you're within the classroom. We all know that you learn better when you have your teacher helping you, not in those times when you're trying to make up something at home. So yeah, we were really happy about that, and actually for the month of January, our attendance was actually still, I can't remember exactly, but it was still relatively high. I think it was over 95 still, which, like we said, January, February are those hard ones to stay healthy. For tardy purposes, there is a jump on this for our students overall. The other ones were percentage, this one's a raw number with it. One of the pieces is that we do have larger and more classes over there. There's a bubble group that came through. That's not to speak to this large of the jump necessarily, but it is part of the story behind it. Another piece, as I mentioned, there are some students that we used to have that weren't showing up for days, like a day a week kind of thing. And we're getting those kids in the classroom, still working to get them there on time. But they're arriving, but it's not always on time. So looking at the numbers, there's a handful where I was like, okay, so-and-so's percent of days there have improved. We still have some tardies, but I'd rather have them there 90% of the day than 0% of the day. So there are a handful that historically have been absent that are actually showing up this year, which is great. But that tardy piece is still, there's a few different reasons and kind of hidden things behind that part too. For our behavior pieces, I know those ones are tricky to read. So on the left-hand side, the far left is disruptive behavior, and then physical, and then just inappropriate behavior. So that was actually 65 students out of our roughly 450 students that we have that had a write-up. 43 of the students had 2 or less write-ups. So it still is a small portion of our population of students that are getting written up, and even the ones that have it, most aren't getting written up multiple times. As Dan had mentioned too, the physical part, a lot of times at Ben Franklin, it's the play fighting, the pushing. Today I had to talk to some about snow. We have snow. So pushing somebody on the snow hill, once again, they're playing King of the Hill, they're having fun, but you can't do that at school because when you fall on the concrete, it's not fun for anybody. And so the kids had gotten written up for that one. It's just an example of a lot of the things that we have for Ben Franklin. But overall, doing, I think, really well. Teachers have started to do more of the write-ups as well. So some of those are ones with teachers along the way. So I'd expect to see a spike when they're doing a little bit more of that documentation right away, because you hear about some of the stories that you wouldn't necessarily hear about otherwise. Similar with Riverside. So for Riverside, the bigger ones that we had there would be the physical and the behavior. So physical is the tallest one there, behavior right next to it, and then language on the right-hand side there. Similar piece, 122 total write-ups, 61 out of our roughly 400 students. So similar kind of trend that we had at Ben Franklin with the numbers. Also, once again, 47 students of the ones that had write-ups had 2 or less write-ups. So a great portion of our students have either 0, 1, or 2 office write-ups that we have there. Overall, like with the physical piece and those, obviously they were appearing typically on the playground and at recess. And so some of the different pieces that we've been doing, we're actually fully staffed with EAs and special ed EAs. So some of those positions are harder to fill positions, and we've actually been able to fill those. So it's nice to actually have them out there more frequently for our supervision. But also when you have more supervision, you also see more. And so there's a little bit of a write-up there. So that trend as well. And then for suspensions, I put the 3 years, I added to show, as Dan had said, the drop overall from what we had been 3 years ago. Ben Franklin is still trending down in that regard, from 26 to 12 to 6.5 for students. One of the things that we've been trying to do a little bit more this year for Ben Franklin is doing the in-school with them, because we want them in school. So they're hanging out with myself and Mr. Gofford, doing some work along the way, tracing their letters, all that good stuff. But yeah, so really trying to do that in-school one, especially if it's not related to more of a physical piece of it, if it's for whatever different reasons that they had. They're safe, they can be in school, we're gonna have them in school as much as we can in that regard. Over at Riverside, once again, we had a higher amount at 31, we did drop down to 7 at this, and this is to like January both years, so it's apples to apples that you're seeing there, kind of thing. This year we did have an uptick with our out-of-school suspensions there that have gone up a little bit, but still down a fair amount from what we were the previous year at that time. One of the things with that I want to say and highlight is that we did have, majority of those were in the fall. There was a cluster of like 3 or 4 of those that happened right after winter break, so kids came back from break, 2 weeks off. Winter weather, all that jazz, forgot how to play school, play nice with everybody. Big thing with our suspensions, once again, if we are sending a kid home, it truly is to try to send that message to the student, to the family, as well as just to give our staff time to revisit what the heck happened, what can we do differently, what processes do we need to revisit for that. And once again, it's only a handful of our students. I mean, we have 450 students, and it was, I think, less than 10 for those write-ups that we had there, those suspensions along the way. Any questions?
Thank you.
I'm the north.
Alright, your clock starts
Thank
now.
you.
You're gonna need to just make more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so it's not gonna be on here.
And
Wow, no.
Didn't call it the right way, I'm not making it happen.
Just so you all know, you were at 14.
That-
You weren't.
That color better care. Hey, I had 2 schools and a 3-1, so.
Alright, so if our time starts now, I'm gonna go with quick culture and tennis real quick, and be very succinct to give lots of time to Tony. So really quickly, just sum this up, and you know, at the middle school, it's such an important age, and what we're really talking about when we look at these pictures is that kind of sums up our values and culture. It's all about community, it's all about relationships, it's all about opportunities for leadership and growth. So just kind of 2 of the examples that I can point to you up here. We have our web leaders on the left-hand corner, so that's something that's been in place since Tony and I got there. We've done some more stuff with them, doing outreach into the community, they go down to elementary schools. They've always welcomed our sixth graders in, but now they do some stuff during the school year with that as well, and we're looking to actually expand that next year so that all sixth graders come in and get some more mentoring throughout the year, and also new kids coming into the building. That's an area we notice that we need to keep doing some more stuff in, also have someone else to lead them. On the right, we just started our first NJHS chapter this year. We have about 50 kids, and they're doing a lot of great stuff in our building. So there's a lot of stuff like that going in the building. These are just two examples of like stuff that we really, really value, and because of middle school, it's all about kind of forming that relationships and making them kind of feel that value and self-worth as they are in this like really vulnerable age. They're just things that we're doing. The North Star, well, you want to?
Yeah, sure. In the middle, I don't know if you've been to the middle school this year and seen in the middle, starting to really recognize kids for doing the right thing. And so you'll notice up there different colored stars as well, represent different grade levels. And there's been students that we have over 200 of them already. And some of them have a little, if you really look closely, an extra star on it. It means they've been nominated more than once. It's student behavior, but teacher driven. And that's
And teachers have really bought
yeah,
into
the
this.
teachers are doing
And I think one of the big things that Tony and I are aligned with a lot, and from our past experience, is really having students lead the way. And so we have web leaders, we have a STAR Council, which is something we'll talk about a little bit more in the behavior section. So we can probably go to the next slide. So attendance, kind of something, there's a lot of stuff on there, but what I'd really like to draw attention to as we talk about the next two slides are our bi-weekly attendance meetings and our individual parent meetings, along with gathering, analyzing data, looking at trends from the year before. So one of the things that 2011 have been really big on since we got in there is really making connections with families, and you're gonna see that in our data and how that's improved our data for attendance and for tardies. It's all about getting kids in the building, making them feel home, making them want to be there, making them have connections. Besides for that, of course, we're doing the normal administrator stuff of just like being really clear with our expectations, from attendance to our tardy system and how that works. What does tardy mean? It means 2 feet in the door, right? That kind of thing, rather than kind of coming as the bell rings. And also working with teachers of like, you need to mark kids tardy. This is really important, because if you're not doing it, then they don't think it's important. Next slide. So really proud of this. We've actually had our attendance so far up until this point increase by 96%. Like I said, that's kind of with some of the work that we've done as an entire school of meeting as administrators with our pupil services all the way down to teachers, making that important. And I want to talk more about on the next slide. Our tardies, if you look at this, we'll talk about the yellow bar, but with the blue bar, it's gone way down. And so a lot of that has to do with the work our team has done. It's a really complex issue when you talk about tardies and attendance at middle school. So just an example, talks I've had with kids this year has everything to do with some mental health issues, or wanting to have connections to school and not wanting to come to school, and setting up things with kids to do that. So I had a kid that was just taking a bubble bath every morning, and that's why he was late. So meeting with a parent and having being like, wait, this is it? How about we take a bubble bath at night? Okay, now we've been on timer. So it's just stuff like that. It's middle school. Like literally it's middle school. So it's all different, and so that's what Tony and I do, and that's why we have these bi-weekly meetings with our pupil services team and social worker, because we're really on top of like, okay, what's the trends, who are the kids, what do we know about them, how do we get them in the door, how do we get the parents in the door, and start making those relationships to make sure that they're getting here in time. That's important. They understand it's important. And
again, this isn't something that should be scary. I mean, this is where we're at because we're looking for it.
Mhm.
If you're gonna be looking for something, you're gonna find it. And this is the difference, because again, a kid walks in class a little late, that's not a big deal, it's only 5 seconds. Kid walks in class 30 seconds late, the next day they come in a minute later, 2 minutes late. If we're not looking for it and have an established expectation what the behavior should be, we're gonna have the behavior done.
And some of it's just as simple as like, now we're doing some work with our, we've got some feedback from parents, we're doing some work with our drop-off line. You've probably seen Officer Holtz out there. That goes into that first hour of tardy. So there's all stuff that goes into it that now that we see this, it's like, okay, why are they coming on time but excused, right? So we're looking at that.
You know, if I could just go back to this 96%, I think that number is pretty good. It truly is, especially at a middle school level, but I think, just a side note is, there's a certain group that's responsible for a lot of the misses, or there's some for trips and things like that. That's all taken into account, doesn't make them truant, you know, I think that, I'm proud of that number, I think we're proud of that number.
And we work really hard at
We
that.
work hard at it, but I think it's staying ahead of the game quicker. The meetings are huge that we have now. They really are, especially get with the families.
And focused.
Well, in the period one tardies is because their bus comes at 6:15 in the morning.
No comment.
Yeah, so,
For some kids, it's just like the conversation of like, what does bedtime look like? Parents, right, what does bedtime look like? How can you maybe make that bedtime a little earlier? What are some better morning wake up routines, right? So,
I mean, it's tough, right, cause their sports go sometimes till,
Yeah.
11 o'clock.
yeah,
we're navigating a lot of that. It's a big adjustment, yeah.
right.
So,
Oh, right, and you start at 7:10, 7:15?
7:05.
7:05, yeah.
7:05.
Central time,
Yeah.
Totally, right, cause
So,
my kids are using this next year,
7:15,
I
two
thought
kids
it
in the
was
door,
sixth
yeah,
grade.
so.
Still pitch black outside.
I feel like it.
We'll have a special slide just for you, Dan.
You'll see here the HS factor, we won't say any names, but
No,
We
we're
have
gonna work on
we
it,
have
but,
monorail system, all the buildings.
on a
it's a
serious
big
note,
jump
when
from
you look at
8:45 to.
that start time, and we actually had this conversation up north too. Because then you look at start time for middle schoolers, and again, back to the day, we could say, well, when I was a kid, we would do this, we would do this. But when you look at start time, there's a reason why, the Air Force Academy is a great example, but there's a reason why they had that start time transition for the Air Force Academy. Now, we could pick on that a little bit, but at the same time, they did a lot of research on start time for schools. And when you look at an appropriate start time for middle school, it's not 7:05 in the morning. But there's a lot of factors that play into why is that the way it is, and people, overall, I've never had people complain about a start time at 7:05 here, which surprised me. Because I would, as a high school principal, I would get start time complaints constantly. You guys start too early, start too early. To the fact where we actually looked and did research on maybe we should monitor or change our start time to a later start time at our high schools. We never did, just because the impacts of athletics, the impact of transportation, some of the other things that factor in there, and other schools in the conference. But that is something that we had a very good, long conversation last year about if we're having academic impacts in a negative manner, start time might be something we would consider looking at again. But again, we're starting to trend academically, so despite the fact that we have an early start time like that, which flies in the face of all the different research that's out there, we're doing academically what we need to do, which is why we keep making that triple.
What time does research say is good for middle school?
Middle schools anywhere between 9 and 9:30. But there's actually states that mandate that.
So they might be there, but they're sleeping.
But it's interesting, being from here, and what I think, what finally dawned on me, we had the high school schedule when I was in high school, at middle school.
Yeah,
So I think kids are accustomed
Mhm.
in the falls,
What
to
you used to.
starting early.
What you used to.
So families, brothers, sisters,
Yep.
parents, right, it's like they're accustomed to that, it's almost like a norm, so, yeah, but 7's early.
It's pretty
It's
good.
pretty early. So, no, nobody watch the clock right now. So, in lieu of going through the narrative of that, I think the best thing is gonna be to explain, looking at our data based on the last couple of years, and kind of explaining what we're seeing and what's being done to address it. So what the handout that you have in front of you will it'll make a lot more sense to you as we go through the data. All right, but we are putting a lot of effort. We've done a lot of things even in the course of the year to continue to address our behavior, which has still improved from last year as well, but also what we all can do better as adults to help out with it as well. So that all being said, if you can go to the next slide with the data. First thing you would see is, and Dan, I think we alluded to earlier, last year, as you can see at the top, there are so many different categories. There's almost too many, it's stressful looking at. So we streamlined it down, but if you really looked at the numbers last year, there was 325 at this point, as opposed to 286 this year, if you take all the numbers into account. But you should not be surprised that it's inappropriate behavior, it is physical contact, it is, there are a couple things we dealt with threats and things of that nature, but disruption, things you would really see in the middle school that and you're gonna see how we're continuing to address that. But the numbers, if you're looking at the overall data, is down, but I think a big part to that too this year is documentation. We're utilizing part of Power School, which is documentation, instead of referring a kid for every time they, right? It's like, let's get the teachers, be proactive in the room, reach out, develop a relationship with the kid.
Right.
Reach out to home, establish these things earlier, and we're seeing a lot of documentations. But if, I was kind of playing around with it, you may see a documentation from a month ago, and you look at the same student, you won't see a referral, you know what I mean? So you're seeing some success to a lot of these things. So I think there's a lot of things that go into.
Yeah, that's a good word for the teacher to form a relationship with the parent and the kid, and so that really stops the problem, which is one of the reasons that a lot of these minors are down, so.
And they're more apt to write this year too. I think last year we were sitting here trying to get adults to put it in. They're doing it now. I think their perception's a little different. They bought into it. Now it's not like, do I have to call home? You don't have to, depending upon what you're putting it in for. So you're seeing, and still in its infancy, we're working through that, but it's
Well,
still.
and more guidance too, right? Because you had kind of made it clear, like, okay, here are the steps consistent across all schools. They don't have to sit there and figure out, like, what do I do in this situation? It's more just following through with what.
Yeah, we were at an advantage, you're right, I think because we, based on what I've learned and what we've learned since last year, the middle school itself had more experience and more, Power School wasn't foreign to them.
What Tony and Russ talking about, we put in process at the beginning of this year, there's a documentation where you can do things. Whether it's like pick up the phone and, hey, Johnny's doing really good in chemistry class. Document it, made a phone call home. And Johnny was mouthing off to me during chemistry class, I called home. I'm documenting it, I'm writing it up. Meanwhile, as I'm documenting it, I'm also having these conversations that if Johnny mouthed off in class, take care of it, principals. It's not, you cannot run a building from a discipline standpoint with 1 or 2 or even 3 people. You have to have everybody involved. When you got 70 teachers that can help handle things and build relationships with kids, instead of just passing the expectation, I'd say administration should handle that. Yeah, you're right, administration should handle certain things. But when you're having a student in class that's getting written up constantly because they're not bringing a pencil to class, that's a problem. And that really stems from, we have to have the ability to deal with and say, I want to build a relationship. Need a pencil, here's a pencil. Kid does it again, okay, now I'm gonna do something different. Maybe I'll ask him for collateral or something, give me your shoe, you can, whatever. And things like that, you're trying to be funny with it, you don't have to make time. But at the same time, you're using those as communications or touch points with the students. And I always used to tell people that were vehemently opposed to having hats. You should allow hats, you should allow hats. And this goes back and forth. You look at the popular thought processes, having a conversation with kids. I used to love not having hats allowed in school. And it wasn't because I like to go chasing kids around yelling at them for having a hat. It's because if I can talk to that kid and build a relationship about taking that hat off and why, I just built an opportunity to prevent that kid from doing something worse later on. And if I'm a teacher doing it, whether I'm a principal doing it, whether I'm a custodian doing it, you're preventing problems from getting worse. And that's what these guys are talking about. And having the ability to document those things so that if we do see a pattern that's there, that we can address it or the teacher can address it. Oh yeah, that's right, I did talk to Johnny about this. I did do those all the time. Poor Johnny. I don't know, I'm getting Johnny's watching it. Abraham wouldn't mind, he knows.
With that point though, another thing that we're instituted, really getting going, grade levels meet weekly, as much as they possibly can, and they can all see things that documentation referrals of the students. So having that, when you go to a meeting, it's not like just this, Abraham did, it's like, okay, it's documented, what are the steps we've been doing, what do we need to, you come together as a cohesive unit to try to determine, because that's always the first layer is the staff, and you're starting to see gradually, because it's pretty new, so to speak. Some of that stuff's going away from myself, Brian, Kurt.
I'm sure Tony you'll see that at the end, it's just being proactive, so we do huddles. We also do grade level meetings now with some grades weekly, and so that way we're able to kind of keep this in the front light so that we can see, okay, this is a student that is doing X, Y, and Z, he's doing this in math class, not in English class, why is that, right? And so we're able to then come up with some really good plans of like being proactive to get ahead of it, so it doesn't get to the point where, he's being kicked out of class every day, the relationship with the teacher is damaged, and so that type of stuff.
It's the proactive and then strategizing together instead of dictating this, you know what I'm saying? And they're doing a really, I'm proud of our staff too, I'm really proud of them. They wanted to meet more every week, they changed that up, actually, so that's kind of cool.
You can tell us about the pyrotechnic violation later.
You called it.
That was-
I'll blame
I saw
that.
that,
I'll
yeah.
blame that.
I'm like, I didn't put that one in, so I'm like, I was.
That's a lighter.
Light, I was a lighter, yeah, it was a lighter.
That's a police call fire.
Pyrotechnic.
I'll claim it.
Yeah, with fireworks. So if you go to the next slide, which is gonna sound like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, unlike a lot of places, other schools, you'll see the numbers actually increased in pay.
I think he meant the numbers going up.
Oh, okay.
No, look, it almost looks like, well, they're saying we're doing all these things, but what's this, right?
Yeah.
So the way to explain this is we've made an effort to really focus physical contact, and then language, not F-bombs necessarily, it can be racial based within each other, within the same groups, whatever. So, and threats, we went through probably a month or so with multiple things, right? So if you look at that number 66, I'll use it as a wholesale right now. Probably over 55 to 60% of that happened pre-Thanksgiving. So a lot of those things were occurring early. It's interesting hearing about the physical contact at the lower buildings, because it's dead on, it's really happening, and we're trying to stop it. But you still have, of the 66, 40 kids are responsible for the 66. 750 aren't. So it's really narrowing it down. We're looking at the groups.
And as you look at that, 5 of them are tied into the majority of those.
Correct, and quite honestly, 7 of them are new to the district out of that 40. So it looks like the numbers are high, but it's had an intent.
Right.
It's trying to set the message. We don't wanna throw people, like you were saying, Dave, that's not what we really, wanna do, right? But at some point, we gotta set the tone
For the culture.
for the culture of it.
It's,
To try to make
sets
it-
the tone for the culture, and on
Yes.
the back end, when a kid is suspended, he's not just suspended, just coming back the next day, there's always a reentry meeting. And a lot of times, especially if the kid has IEP, I'm meeting with his case manager, sometimes teachers, and we're coming up with a plan of like, why is this happening, right? So that we're prepared when the parent and the kid comes back the next day, matter of fact, I have one tomorrow, where we have realized what the problem is, and now we've adjusted something in their schedule to alleviate that situation from happening again, right? So there's a lot of work that goes behind when part of it's whole building set the tone, but there's also part of it that's individual with the kid, where we're really coming up with these individualized plans to make sure that it doesn't happen again and that we're more proactive with our approach, so.
And, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, okay, so was it more of just like you looked at the data and you're like, oh, the physical, or all of a sudden there's this uptick in racial slurs, we've gotta nip it in the butt, were you very
So what ended up happening, it's a really good question, is that we were recognizing it was becoming, spreading like wildfire, it was happening.
Right,
Students weren't recognizing the severity of it.
okay,
It was, we didn't want it to disrupt the culture, so we started basically norming it, if this, then this, we're really working through that currently as we speak, right? But if
right,
this, then this, so it's trying to keep that consistency with the students to understand it. If you say I'm gonna do this, guess what?
right.
This is gonna be, to try to get it.
And so we have behavior boosters too as well, where we actually show some of this data to students. And basically say, this is what's happening, and this is something we're gonna address, and, this is, if this happens, you get X, Y, Z, right? And this is why you shouldn't do it. I've even, parents will tell you, when I just had my booster, I gave them real world examples of this is why we don't do this in the real world. This is what we're trying to teach you, because I used to be a high school administrator, we're trying to get you ready for high school. They're trying to get you ready for the real world, so this all lines up, right? It's been received really well, and to be honest, we see a big dip after that.
Yeah.
And keep in mind too, this isn't like, kids in class and using swears
Right.
for 3 minutes. This is still part of the whole district progressive discipline.
The whole school will be all.
Right, it's that progression, you get an opportunity, certain thing, a kid does a certain thing, you're gonna be out of school. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're giving them opportunities along the way. If you're doing this, hey, you got a detention this time. do this, you get a second detention, or, hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're looking, okay, now you got in school, now you got out of school, now you got out of school with a meeting, now you got out of school, and you continue that path of repeat, refusal, or neglect to obey school rules, you're gonna be sitting before you guys. And what we're trying to do is say, no, we're gonna nip it here. You're gonna have a meeting, you're out of school for a day, the only reason I'm keeping you off for the day is because I gotta get your schedule, my schedule, and someone else's schedule to align, because we're gonna have a meeting where I talk about this. That stuff you're doing in school, that doesn't work, don't do that.
Well, it's kind of
And if you do this, this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I can hear it's like a win-win, cause it's like, for them, obviously, all the things you're saying, but then also for you all, that it's not like, oh, should we suspend them for this, should we not,
Yeah.
like, it's just a clear,
Very clear.
And that's
Yeah.
really, that whole.
cause you gotta be the hammer.
Yeah, exactly, but, and it's harder,
That's what
like,
we call them.
comparing it's like middle and high school, I don't wanna speak for high school to elementary, it's kind of a different world. And keeping in mind, you look at the 66, or look at the OSS's, for example, it's 43. Keep in mind, if it's a physical thing, divided by 2. Because if there's a physical thing going, it's probably gonna be 2 people that are part of the 43, you follow what I'm saying?
And you're also
Yeah.
cutting the number of days.
And exactly, but, one thing I did wanna follow up with your point, when we have these intake meetings, it's not just like us, it's, today we had one, it's parent, county social worker, current therapist at the care center, our counseling, so it's a wholesale approach, it's not a this, it is like, okay, what are we doing to not only help the student, but protect everybody else? We gotta keep, and getting that perspective in mind with all these things, so, it's not like throw them out, okay, come back, we'll start again, no, there's a procedure that goes into it. You can kick to the next one. And we have this in here, if you look at the highlighted, those are additions, like things we really added this year. But I guess with that, if the reason I handed the sheet out to you guys was to see how it's a tiered approach. So with all the behaviors, if you look at it, tier 1 is, when it says universal, I don't wanna, it's sound insulting, but universal is everybody. So all the students are understanding, the teachers are owning the behaviors, the kids are being shared the behavior matrix, the students know what to expect, we're trying to be as clear as, consistent, and you'll see the bio on there, which is something we've done mid-year to kind of streamline what's the role of the dean, what's the role of myself, what's the role of Russ, what's the role of Kristen, right? It's trying to set up, it's a procedure, progressive, that's probably the best way to say it, Dan. Progressively, what are we doing as a wholesale? But, okay, it doesn't work for everyone. The tier 2 is the targeted things, so take those 40 kids that have been mentioned, they're in a different world where we are continually putting them, whether it's groups like with me, I have a group, or my crew, Wednesday crew, which is becoming like a thing, like it, but you're discussing the things when they're not in trouble, you have behavior plans for kids, everybody thought behavior plans were just for like special ed kids, which is the furthest thing from the truth, they're all our kids, so everybody has access to them. But and even with kids that do have IEPs, it's looking at their SDI and how are we gonna address that to attack maybe the behavior we're seeing, so, and then the rising star thing is taking the luster away from being naughty, where kids are really like, they get rewarded for it, not like a racer, it's like they pick out of a dip or they pick a chip, they get me cooking out for them, or they get free a la carte or whatever, right? But the kids.
So what Tony's talking about is like he's done a great job with this year, he's making it cool to do the right thing. And so what you do then is you have your kids who are the leaders, your basketball players, your football players, everyone else that are doing the right thing, and kids follow that. So that's
STAR stands for safe, being a team player, being accountable, being respectful. So it has, and with the, with web leaders, with junior high society, with STAR Council, it's pushing, as they're being leaders of the school, pushing it. But I can't stress enough the teachers and what they are doing to make this cool, and I get hounded down because I'm the one that gives out the passes for when they win and kids are yelling, "What am I name called?" Sorry, but so really they're buying into it, and it's just something to look at the good things without making a big deal. They're announced every day, the kids are read, they love it. So it's just continuing building the culture. Same with assemblies and things of that nature. We continue to do those things, and they love them, and it's all student driven. Like that sheet says, it's building relationships, contacting home, and then, but more importantly, it's student driven, so parents are aware. I've seen more parents in the building this year to be honest with you, and not necessarily for negative reasons.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we're popping in, so it's, you're starting to see it gradually, nothing's perfect, obviously we have work to do because we're always revisiting and what could we do better, so.
Well, kids will always be kids.
Oh,
In middle
and
school.
middle school is unique.
I know. So how do you do at nap time?
I was very conscious of time here, okay, so. I'm proud of what's going on, what's
should
really
be.
going on.
You
I
should
should
be.
be. Me personally, I know
The
you,
work is going
For
on.
the past couple of years, it's a different school. Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's, and we're gonna keep working, all of us are in this room, so it's a lot of work,
Thanks, guys.
All right, Christina and John,
along with the day.
you guys.
We'll take over, we're very proud too, but I'm really long-winded about it.
Christina and John, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So, as everybody started off with, this is kind of students came up with this, I think it was 3 years ago now. Student commitments, so engage, empower, excel are the words that they came up with, and so focusing on how to get students engaged, not only in their classwork, last year really focusing on distraction-free, but really pushing involvement in extracurriculars, and D'Amato has done a great job pushing clubs and activities, and I think we've had 5 new clubs this year, which is awesome. So just getting kids engaged in their learning, but also in the school community. Empowering them and making sure that that kind of goes along with accountability. Accountable for their actions, we follow the code of conduct and being very consistent, which makes it easier, I should say, to be consistent, but also empowering them to support each other. And so we've done a lot in the last 3 years with anti-bullying, we have the tip line, Speak Up Wisconsin, just coming and reporting things that are concerning, whether that's peer issues or bigger concerns. And then Excel, this we really focus on how to make yourself the best version of yourself. So using the resources that are available to you, whether that's through student services, through academic support, Phoenix Time, different stuff like that. And you can go to the next one. So we're gonna lead into attendance, same as kind of there's nothing remarkably different that we do at the high school, but just being clear, consistent, using the same protocol and systems to support and celebrating a lot of the students in different ways for their attendance. You can go to the next one. So very consistent, yearly to date, average daily attendance right at 95%. So doing really well. You can go to the next one. And then this is looking at our tardies, and I would like to point out that last year's you see that, so it jumps because we have the odd even day. So on the bottom, it's labeled period 1 and then it's labeled period 3, so the next one is period 2. So those are like the 2 first periods of each day, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Which makes sense why they have higher tardies. But last year was at 1,000 and this year we're at
Yeah, they're about 200 or so less to it.
So seeing improvement in that,
That graduating class, just.
yeah.
No, it's an
We'll blame
incoming
that
freshman
shirt.
that we got trained.
Yeah, it's all hard about
Carried over in the high school, just like it's supposed to.
Except Doc.
But I think, I know he's joking, but the system, I mean, when you get a system going throughout the district, it really does make an impact, so great job.
And as you're looking at the breakdown here too, this, again, the reason why this is not golded, because they did manage and monitor their tardies last year, is they had a different system in place outside of Power School. And now that we've got it in Power School systematically, we're able to manage it this way too. And you also have another system with Outpass, but I won't jump on that.
So always working on attendance, but seeing improvement. Continuing the systems that we've been working on. So we're gonna jump to behavior.
Speaking of truth, sorry, great discuss tonight.
Yeah, it was. Sure was.
Judge was awesome too.
So piggybacking off of that too, so behaviors, just once again, the processes, we work really closely with the middle school to have clear and consistent, processes and things like that. So we do also ask teachers to log things as documentation for like teacher managed things. And then addition of cell phone logs is now being separated from behavior as well as attendance. So once again, like we talked about, we're reporting, students get to report things through the MFHS tip line or speak up, speak out. And we do have different interventions such as behavior contracts with students, the place, which is where Ms. Luckett allows students to come work with her to kind of calm down for a minute, and then be able to get them right back into class. We also do parent meetings, student check-ins, just anything to try to reduce those behaviors and build relationships. And then obviously communicating, collaborating with families to work together on all that.
I do want to point out one thing, and this is kind of a serious note too, because Christina and I met with the judge last year, and you went to that, John, I know Tony was there tonight. One of the things that we established last year with the court was an actual truancy court, whereas part of the juvenile court system, where we get to work directly with the judge, we're separate from adult court. And they have been awesome to work with. And it's been a different change with law enforcement in the court system, because prior to that, there'd been this kind of, well, we're gonna do it, nothing's gonna happen. But the judge has been really, really good at working with these guys and coming up with plans and listening to what it is that we think is gonna work with the kids to make them come to school, or have them come to school, or have them do things differently behaviorally. So that's been a really good connection, and that was, when was that, Christina, last July? So just, it's other things that they're doing besides just in school too. This is a year-long process that when we start doing it, we meet with them because we know it's extending beyond our four walls. It's going out into the cities, going out into the courts and working with people like that too, so I did want to just touch base on that.
At what point does it get to the truancy court?
So we have a process in place where, habitual truant is 10 days. And so we do really clear communication with families. We're messaging home, they get a letter, we do a phone call with a social worker. And then once you reach that 10-day threshold, then that's where we decide that would have to go to the truancy court. And then the judge does a really good job communicating with us, with families, to either uphold it or, maybe adjourn it until a later date with some different orders overhead, so.
And that's worked with their SROs too.
Yep.
Remember, we had that meeting with the SROs and we were talking about that process too. So that's changed and been modified where they do the citations, and then again, if it continues, the citations will continue. If they're doing what we're asking them, show up to school, do good in school, don't have any behavior issues, then the judge has been able to work with us saying, well, we're gonna throw it out. If you don't, here's what I'm gonna do, I can pull your license, I can pull this license, I can pull that license, I can do all sorts of things, and I can cite you for money. So that all you're gonna end up by doing is having worse things, why don't you do the things that they're asking, it's not too much. And it's been real nice because it's been real open communication between all of them.
Well, before it even gets to that point too, when we have communication with families,
Yeah.
a lot of times it stops that, it intervenes that behavior because we find out, what is it that's stopping you from getting to school on time? Or a lot of times it's a transportation thing, or hey, I didn't realize sort of thing that it was building up. And so a lot of times those conversations go really well, where it's like we don't even have to go that route.
Yeah.
This next one, behavior. So something to point out is that the log count on this year is 90 is the threshold, whereas last year we're up to 400. But a couple of things to point out here, cell phones is the big one from last year, because that was our big initiative, just like Mr. Halverson was saying. When you're looking for something, then that's kind of an outlier. So this year it's down to 77. And so that's by and large a lot of work from Luke Langer at the school, who helps with cell phones and being very clear and consistent with communication with that. So that has dropped consistently. And then another one to point out is the inappropriate physical, and so that's at 16. And so this can also be interpreted, just like we were talking earlier, as possibly even buddies messing around, right? So it's that's where that would be listed at. So, and then the other one is inappropriate behaviors, 88. So these things, as we're seeing, as we're clear and consistent with building relationships and working on, getting them to a point of behaving better in the school, obviously these numbers are going down. So.
when Sarah and I first started talking about this last year, and you can see this is a direct result of why we made the changes that needed to be made. Because as you look at the span that's across the top on that chart that's in there. If you look at that, yeah, you'll see some outliers in there. Hey, guess what? There's a cell phone thing we gotta deal with. Hey, guess what? There's this one over here. But then you're also like, well, what about these guys? These are kind of important things. We should fix this. Well, what about these guys? So when you look at the overall picture here, the whole point of what we were looking to do last year, and Sharon and I were very much focused on this, is what are we looking to fix? What are we looking to get better at? Well, cell phones, yes, still an issue, but you're working on it. Inappropriate behavior, yep, they're disrupting class. We're gonna get them out of class because we can't have them taken away from the education of others. Insubordination, well, insubordination last year was, I think we're a little higher, but. So those are the reasons why we did what we did. Back to what John just said, this fighting versus, pushing, shoving, kicking and things. We're gonna be bringing that back because we need to know legitimately how much of this is a real fight. I guarantee you, at the high school, you're not gonna see it. There's been one this year, which blows my mind. As a former high school principal, as a middle school principal, we would have one an hour. And we're not talking about just pushing and shoving, we're talking knockdown dragouts. Well, that's a different place, but these are the things why we wanna focus what we're looking at. Is there stuff that we need to do differently next year where we gotta change and bring some subjects back? So that's why we did it the way we did, and that's why you're seeing what you're seeing.
The top bar,
I'm impressed if you're.
The 400.
Able to see that.
really, yeah, so the top bar, it says vaping on the top line, and then on the bottom it says nicotine, is that the same?
Yeah.
So we've stayed the same there?
We did, yeah, we did separate, vaping versus nicotine versus, THC, so. Yeah, we did actually separate that, so we can kind of define, like, once again, you're looking for a situation, they're treated, the same but a little different. So that's why we wanna just separate that and see what that looks like.
So I guess overall, that has gone down overall?
Significantly.
Okay, alright, good.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a huge thing we looked at last year.
Yeah, if you look at, the chart on ours on the bottom, drug related is 2, which is what would be THC,
Mhm.
and then nicotine is 6, so. Yeah,
3 years ago, that was
Yeah, well done.
substantial.
Right, yeah, that's great.
so, and just building off of what Halverson was saying here, last year we had 21 in school suspensions, and then this year 27. Once again, right, we're trying to prevent those bigger behaviors from happening. OSS is similar, we had 3 more this year than last year, but once again, when you're taking a look at this, what we're trying to do is prevent, give people time to recoup, be able to have those meetings with families, have the reentry meeting, be able to get a team together and maybe even build a behavior plan and an intervention plan, which for the most part stops what's gonna happen then in the future, so. And then, so just some next steps here, so with classroom disruptions, we just continue to build through tier 1 behavior supports. Once again, behavior contracts with students, teachers and families, we're just building relationships and trying to find the root of the problem to be able to fix that, so we're not having further issues. Clear and consistent communication and following the code of conduct and expectations, which makes that simpler, just as the middle school's doing. Cell phones, we do have clear communication and educating families, with that, as you can see, like we, this time last year, we had over 329 write-ups, and this year it's 77, so it's part of the culture in our building to not have distractions like that. And then once again, we're just, having consistent fulfillment of expectations all throughout the building, so.
Yeah.
Is that 10 minutes?
Good job. That's pretty impressive. You and Christina really got it done.
What?
You guys really got that done.
Practice.
Do you wanna let them go and then we can finish up our
Sure.
agenda then?
Well, thank you
Okay.
everyone.
All right, yeah, thanks for coming in, appreciate it.
So-
Thank you, you guys are busy.
Good job.
Thank you. Yeah,
Alright,
everything looks like it's trending in the right direction, and I know that that's a lot of consistency over time, so
Thank you.
well done.
Yeah.
I know.
You gotta get through it, right? You guys. You did that. I was wondering what you did there. They're all good. We can go. Let me fire back. got here, we were thinking. I set that up.
Anything else to conclude?
No, I just gotta say, working with these guys, and we, not only is this,
Thank you. Have a great night.
this is one of the things that they do, that makes our APs, when we did our safety plans, which you had, all remember going through, when we did our whole session for it. That was them issue.
Thanks, Tony.
So,
Thank you. See you guys. Take care.
when you look at the work that they're doing, it goes beyond, and you think back, well, what's an assistant principal, or back in the day, vice principal, what's a vice principal's job? Well, they're the ones that yell at you when you do things wrong. That's, don't get me wrong, they do that when they need to, but for the most part, they don't need to because they're building relationships with the kids and the families in advance. So that's been, from my standpoint, it's been awesome in my spot, because not only am I getting to work with really great people, I get to train them, and I get to build the experience in them, the stuff that I really never had when I was an assistant principal. Not that I didn't, I had great leadership from people that I work with, but for me, it's neat because I get to train the next level of what these guys are doing. So they're a great group, they're phenomenal with kids, they're great with teachers. I love watching them work with families. Tony and Russ are top notch with it. And I look at what they're doing now, we always had the theory as principals and assistant principals is you're getting kids ready for what's next.
Right.
And whether it's getting them ready for middle school, whether it's getting, whether it's getting ready for third grade, whether it's getting them ready for middle school, whether it's getting them for high school, whether it's getting ready for the real world. That's really what an assistant or associate principal does. And these guys are great at what they do. And I love working with them is just, it's really, they're hungry for learning, they're hungry for new experiences to get better, and they're really good at what they do.
Well, that's
So,
obvious by
You know,
looking at
it is, and they're passionate about kids, which is what you really want.
All right, well, anything to add to any of that?
No, thank you.
No? Okay. Future agenda items, next month is Alex.
Yep,
right?
Alex is gonna be coming in.
Okay,
He's actually gonna be doing kind of a preview with our parochial schools this Friday with Mr. Munoz. But he's got all the updates ready to go for special ed for next month.
okay. And focusing heavy on budget, probably.
There's gonna be some conversations,
Solution.
solutions somehow.
Or
Yeah.
workarounds or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
No, that was a big hit.
Okay. Well, then all I need is a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So are adjourned with that.
Yes. 7:06 there, Mr. Lane?
7:06 I have, yes. Thank you.
All right.
Is it true that Hallie's having